Hello and welcome to this new episode of the Developer-led podcast, the show where we explore how modern companies build and grow developer tools. My guest today is Rishabh Kaul. Rishabh is the head of marketing at Appsmith, a low-code open source platform to help developers quickly build apps on top of their data sources. Previously to joining Appsmith, he was the co-founder of Belong, an HR tech startup that raised 50 million from investors like Sequoia, and an early employee at GreyOrange, a robotics startup now valued at upwards of $800 million. He's also an active angel investor and runs a syndicate called Goodfellas to invest in SaaS and developer tool startups. Okay, hi Rishabh, thank you for joining me today. Maybe to get started, could you tell us a little bit about how you kind of stumbled into the world of developer marketing?
I think my entire professional journey has just been one accident after another. I mean, I started out with impact investing, then worked in robotics for a while, and then HR tech, and now, developer tools. So you can imagine how interesting a shift it was, where I was marketing to HR and recruiters who are traditionally, amongst the lesser technologically savvy departments in a company, to developers, and that to open source, which is the most opinionated bunch of people in the world. So it's been super interesting. I knew I always worked in B2B. I've enjoyed B2B a lot. I think in the HR tech startup that I was running, we spent a lot of time talking to not just the HR folks, but also their business counterparts who tended to be engineers, product managers, and I realized that I really enjoyed working with them. And so after running my startup for about 7 years, I was figuring out next steps. And that's when I started, talking to Abhishek, the founder of Appsmith, who I've known for a really long time. And we were discussing, potentially, a role that I could play. The team was really small at that time and just found it really exciting. I'd faced the problem of building internal tools at my previous startup. Like all of us have built internal tools at some point or the other, whether it's using, Django or, React or whatever, some off the shelf solution. And so I definitely understood the problem really well and sort of, figured out that this is a great place where the platform is horizontal enough that it can serve a very large sort of base. So as a marketeer, that was very exciting that you had a large base and now you could figure out if you wanted to focus on one subsegment, things like that. So yeah, man, like that sort of got me into developer marketing. It's a global product. We had just come out of COVID, so everything was happening online. And I think all of those things sort of led to me deciding to move on to the developer marketing side.
Cool. And can you tell us in a nutshell what Appsmith is doing?
So Appsmith is a platform to build custom software. Typically, the main problem that Appsmith is solving is that inside every organization, you have a bunch of software that companies make, which helps run critical operations. Typically, this software is built on top of data, and often this data is your proprietary data sitting in a database. And then you mash that up with APIs and stuff like that. And so you always need custom functionality to either build out these apps or even extend the functionality of your SaaS apps. Think about Zendesk or, HubSpot or Salesforce or whatever. And that's when, often a backend engineer gets involved who ends up having to build these things. What we realized is that backend engineers hate front-end programming. They would rather spend their time thinking about security, scaling databases, as opposed to think about, the width of the padding of a particular page or how a button looks. And so we felt that, let's create a tool which makes their life easier and give them all the sort of, additional functionalities like, role-based access control or audit logs or SSO and all of that out of the box so that they can just sort of focus on the business logic rather than, get worried about a bunch of these things. So that's really what Appsmith is for. And the fact that it's open source is super awesome because you're dealing with a lot of data, a lot of sensitive data. People prefer self-hosting solutions like these. They also want to be able to see the source code so that they can get it past their infosec easily, as well as contribute features if they see something not in our roadmap and they want that feature. So just overall, like a really good ecosystem to build out some of these tools.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that pain. If I look at our backend engineers, I think the last thing that they want to do is develop something in React or Vue or any sort of front-end framework. Okay, you already kind of touched on the fact that you're open source, and I mean, you already have, I think, 28,000 stars on GitHub, so I think you could say that the project is definitely popular. How did you kind of get there? What was kind of the journey from, let's say, 0 to 28,000 stars?
Yeah, I think stars are a interesting interesting metric, right? Everybody talks about stars being important, and it's hard to pinpoint what stars actually convey. Does it really convey product market fit? Does it convey, something
I
else?
agree, yeah.
We tend to think of it in terms of brand in some ways, where it's like, that, okay, if you get a lot of stars, that means that you're sort of being well known. Like it sort of forms like a brand metric in some ways for us, right? And so the journey was that, in the early days, we were, still building out the product. We launched it on GitHub. GitHub is probably the last truly free platform for distribution. So like ads have not made their way to GitHub. And so I think a lot of the early traction was really just, writing a post on dev.to and Hashnode, and then, just sharing it with a few friends and it getting picked up by a few other folks. They ended up mentioning us on Reddit. And so that's sort of led to like, a steady rise in the first couple of months. We then announced it on Hacker News, and we got like, a decent response, but it wasn't like, we weren't on the first page or anything. I think it just sort of led, what that led to is that because we had a steady rise, we ended up trending for a couple of days on GitHub. And GitHub is awesome, right? Like new projects, they come and, promote you. And so you trend not only at the overall level, but also in specific sort of categories, right? So like when you're creating a GitHub project, it's really important to think about the tags that you add on the project, because you can add more than one, and you want to sort of carefully also put a marketing hat on somewhere where you're like, what, I want to pick those tags that I know people might be searching for. So in our case, for example, TypeScript would be one of that tags, right? Not just React or Java or something like that, or internal tools, which wouldn't get a lot of traffic. So I think stuff like that really helped. And then from there, we would just like write a lot of posts, a lot of content, and like we went crazy with canonical URLs, right? So like the same post would be published across multiple different platforms, which brought in more audience. And I think that was really useful. We were also very active on Reddit, which brought in, a lot of traffic, which eventually led to more stars. I think if I were to think of some distinct things that led to this was the interesting thing with Appsmith is that on day zero, actually with any open source tool, is that unlike with traditional SaaS products, open source products can very easily get adopted with small companies and big companies on day one. And so for some reason, when we built it out, we were obviously thinking about the English speaking world, right? US, India for a large extent is also English speaking, but we started getting picked up in places like China, in Taiwan. So I remember like there were definitely a couple of instances where we didn't even know, and we saw like a huge spike in traffic and we didn't know where it was coming from. Turns out we got featured in like the Hacker News equivalent of Taiwan or something like that, or like China. And that just, I think just overnight like doubled our star count, right? Which then led us to get featured on GitHub's trending list again. So it became like a virtuous cycle. So I feel like often as a company, you also want to be a little cognizant of where you're getting traffic from. It might not always be from places that you necessarily imagine. Like, for example, right now, I know that we get a lot of traffic from Portuguese and Spanish speaking countries. And so the newest DevRel that who's joined our team is multilingual. And so while he goes and creates videos in English, he also creates it in Spanish, and we are seeing like a huge sort of inflow of audiences that we wouldn't be able to attract if it wasn't for these skills. So it's really interesting how some of these things sort of add on. And then there's obviously little things like, our newsletter, we would ask people, hey, if you really like the project, can you please star it? So you sort of look at all the tools at your disposal, but do it in a way in which it is not pushy, but it's sort of gently there, right? And then you track and see, is that working or not?
So you mentioned that content played a big role, and especially distributing that content on different platforms with canonical URLs. What kind of content did you publish? Did you just went straight out and said, okay, this is Appsmith, or did you go a bit more decent about it?
I would love to say that, we knew on day one what we were doing. That would be a lie. So initially, before Appsmith launched, we used to run a newsletter just to build up a list. And that newsletter basically curated, articles, technology articles from all over the web. Our CTO would sit and read those articles, and every week, would go and create a summary of like, these are the 5 articles you should read, and here are like 3-line bullet points, right? It was called in snippets. Did that for a while. That didn't really work. This was before I had joined the company, a couple of months before I had joined. And so we were talking about the product, but we also started talking about a lot of general engineering topics. We were talking about how to be a better engineer, or like, thought leadership kind of stuff, right? And we realized that was okay, but it wasn't really necessarily leading to, an uptick in traffic. Nor was it really helping Appsmith, the product, evolve, right? And so through a series of iterations, we realized that one of the challenges with a tool like Appsmith or any other horizontal platform is that people don't know what you are. In fact, even today, this space has a lot of players in the last couple of years, and people still don't know they don't have a word. This doesn't exist as a category. Low code is too reductive, because one could argue that, a lot of the Kubernetes automation platforms are also low code, right? Some people would say like a Supabase is low code, right? So like low code is too all encompassing. So like when you look at these internal tool building framework / thingies, there's still no word for it, right? And so what we realized was that a lot of content is really just going to be around use case marketing. It's going to be around telling people, hey, here are all the different things that you can do with it. The leader in this kind of marketing is obviously Zapier, where you look at Zapier, where they've created millions of landing pages where they talk about, hey, you can use Zapier to do X for Y kind of thing. And so we realized that our journey at Appsmith is, at least this part of it, is going to be around people might end up reaching Appsmith looking for one particular use case, and they will try to solve that use case. And once they have solved that use case, they will be like, oh, okay, I have done this. Oh, I didn't realize I could also do these other things. And slowly they will start bringing in all their processes to something like Appsmith, right? What we don't expect is that on day one, somebody goes and researches everything, and there is an org-wide deployment where hundreds of engineers come together, and all of them have their use cases at hand. So there's a lot of user education required. So a lot of the content is really around. So the low-hanging fruit was how to create X clone with Appsmith, right? How to create a Calendly clone, how to create a whatever Todoist clone, like all of these kinds of things. And then I think from there we realized that, okay, all of these use cases are great, but they are sort of like toy use cases, right? Like why would somebody come and use Calendly if a Calendly already exists? Like, it's great for me to build it out and it looks cool, but it's not actually going to it's not going to lead to product adoption, right? And like, then what's the point of content if it's not being intentional and driving somebody to usage, right? And so what we realize is that what is really interesting is, let's look at a lot of popular tools, but then let's look at the functionalities that these tools don't have. And now let's go help people create tools on top of it. So for example, let's take an example of Salesforce, right? So everybody knows that Salesforce licenses cost a bomb, right? Nobody wants to go spend, you're okay spending a Salesforce license for your sales guys, but you don't want to spend it for your, I don't know, like customer support, maybe. So what we would like, and one of the Appsmith tutorials that we would create would be, hey, how do you expose the Salesforce data to everybody in your org without having to pay for licenses, right? And so you can now create a dashboard with CRUD functionality, which integrates Salesforce along with, if it's a support use case, with GitHub issues or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And like you can create this use case, right? Now that is suddenly really, really interesting because that's a problem that millions of companies are facing, right? It's the same thing with Shopify. It's the same thing with any. So now if you've proven it for Salesforce, you could do it for any CRM or any help desk software, anything where you don't want to pay user fees, right? And so similarly, we ended up creating like a lot of different kinds of topics which are related to missing functionalities of existing SaaS tools that companies would anyways be paying for, and figuring out how Appsmith can bring in that added functionality. So a lot of that kind of stuff was really useful, and to this day we are doubling down on that. That's pretty cool.
Cool. All right. I already understood that content played a really big role, or plays a really big role in your marketing mix. How would you could you kind of break down the other kind of channels that you use to acquire users for Appsmith?
So I think we've tried a lot of things. One of the challenges, and it's exciting but challenging, is that in the early days you want to go and do everything, and so and so we did a lot of things, and we realized some of them work for us, and some of them did not really work. Maybe because we were spread too thin, right? As individual channels, I'm sure each of these channels have worked out for somebody else. But I think in the early days, we just so GitHub obviously was a big channel. One of the things we realized is that there are a lot of these directories that are built on top of GitHub. SaaS Hub and like a bunch of these things, which basically track GitHub lists. And these are like these third-party tools, and they seem to have a lot of good SEO, right? Open source alternative to X, right? So we basically went and listed ourselves on all of these, directories. The second thing we realized was that Hacker News is a great place. There's two parts to Hacker News. There is a part which is around obviously getting your post on the front page, which cannot be gamed. You have to, that's a bit of a luck of the draw. I mean, you can obviously learn from other people and stuff like that, but like I can't put that into a model saying we're definitely going to get something, right? But what we can do is potentially look out for certain topics that are being discussed in on Reddit and Hacker News, and basically try to contribute to that discussion regularly. And if as part of that Appsmith does end up surfacing, that's great. The beauty of Reddit and Hacker News is that they stop comments after a point, right? So when a post is really hot, after whatever, a couple of weeks, nobody else can post on it. And so if you get on there, then you're sort of immortalized in the archives, right? Like nobody else is going to be able to, there'll have to be another thread where they can come in, right? And so that became another interesting channel. Syndication of content across like distribution became interesting. So one of the things that we did is we got some of us in the team, we were anyways spending a lot of time on communities like Discord and Slack. And we just joined, each one of us just picked a few of these communities that we were interested in. The aim was not to talk about Appsmith. The aim was to be part of a community that you can, go to for advice and give back to. But what that does is that, unlike in places like Reddit and Hacker News, where you might have an audience, but that audience doesn't know you. You don't even know who that other person is on the other side. It's Draco3964, right? Versus in a lot of these communities, like the communities that we met on, right?
Yeah.
There is an individual identity, and you end up creating a great sort of group of people who become friends, and then you sort of grow together and stuff like that. So I think that Discord, Slack was a great channel, especially to get the word out. So we joined a couple of communities around Postgres and React, and like communities that were relevant to to us, and just started sort of learning there. It would become a great place to like share a piece of content and get feedback saying, hey, this is what I was thinking. What do you think? That would lead to them sharing it or somebody capturing it in their newsletter. That was pretty cool. I think some of the other channels that we tried, which were a double-edged sword, were uh, TikTok. I think TikTok got us a lot of traffic and signups, but it wasn't really the best quality. YouTube, on the other hand, has been great for us. We use it primarily more for user education, but it also leads to some acquisition. Um, Twitter, I don't think we figured out. I think we suck at Twitter, but we are learning. LinkedIn seems to be doing well. Reddit seems to be doing really well. Um, yeah, I think these are primarily the channels that we've seen work. But like nothing beats word of mouth. Our own Discord community has steadily grown. We're at about, I think last I checked, about 7,000 people in our Discord. So we are now growing our email list. I mean, we have a big email list, but like up till now, it's been really just a lot of product updates. Trying to come up with content which is also more around engineering best practices rather than just about Appsmith. And we've just started a couple of other channels that I missed out on was podcasts. So we did an entire campaign in 2022 where I just took it upon myself to make sure that, hey, Appsmith is a tool which applies to everyone, but you need like 10-15 minutes to explain what it does because it's a lot of use cases. So I got the three founders of the companies on some 60 podcasts in that year, right? From Stack Overflow to MongoDB to everyone. And I think that helped, get visibility because you knew that in that year in 2022, there would have been at least, I don't know, maybe 500,000 listens cumulatively. So I know that 500,000 people have at least heard 10 minutes about Appsmith, right?
How did you get on those podcasts?
So initially, it was just a lot of cold emails and a lot of cold reach outs. And once it was validated that this is something that we want to do, we worked with a booking agency. And it was interesting because they had never worked with DevTools companies before. I was very skeptical because I was like, the hosts of these podcasts they're not going to like people reaching out to them. So, we took a bet on them, they took a bet on us, and it worked out pretty well. And I think the advantage of that was that, like rather than spending on something like I had a call, I could either, because we had just raised some funding, and so I could either spend the money on PR or spend the money on podcast. And I realized that podcast is a better investment of our time, that budget at this point of time versus say a PR agency. So
Yeah, I think that's smart. I mean, if you consider if someone listens to a podcast for like, I don't know, half an hour, 45 minutes, compared to if someone reads an article, obviously that person won't forget about Appsmith.
Yeah, I think in a PLG context it makes a lot of sense, right? If we were an enterprise company where we were just doing top down and all of that stuff, probably there might be merit to spending time with Gartner and like all of that stuff. But like if it's bottom up adoption, I want to go where like at the heart of all of this distribution are two things, right? I want to go where my audience is, and second is I want to create sources of recurring traffic, right? So that one comment on Reddit, it will just keep on bringing me 10 people every month. Great, I'm very happy with that, because if I have 500 of such little things, I'm now getting like 5,000 referral traffic over month on month, right? So at every step the idea is, and the same thing with podcasts, right? They live on, there's a network effect there. So like what is it that we can do which it doesn't matter how much the actual traffic is. What matters is it happening at a recurring basis, right? Like it's a whole difference between one time sale versus an ARR kind of a thing, right? So ARR is obviously more exciting because it goes into perpetuity, right? So that's how we sort of think about traffic and distribution.
Cool. I think you also recently went through a kind of through reworking your messaging and your website, right? Could you maybe walk us a little bit through the whole process, because I think that's always super interesting, especially having a developer audience in mind.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's some of it we are still constantly going through as well. So there's some stuff which is still in the pipeline. I think the first few years of the Appsmith journey were all about individual developers, right? Individual developers, a lot of them backend engineers, uh, who just want to understand what the product does, right? So the first couple of years were all about feature marketing, right? I had to unlearn things like sell benefits. You're like, no, let's just talk about features. You end up on a landing page. Here are the 30 things you get. You're a smart engineer. You'll figure it out. There's our code. Play with it. You have any questions? Ping us on Discord, right? Um, so, so I think from there, to we started sort of realizing as we started, having a monetization plan, and we started having a paid product, we started realizing that the kinds of people that we were talking to were still part of the engineering org, but they were not necessarily ICs, right? These were engineering managers, a lot of times directors. And so started hearing from the market that like it's still a little confusing about what Appsmith is. Like, not every person is just gonna come, look at the website, try out the product. We want everyone to do that, but there are going to be a bunch of people that might want to know, hey, what is it that you can do? And so that's when we sort of moved away from saying, here is an open source internal tool app builder. Here's what I would recommend you do, right? So like if you type in Appsmith competitors, right, or alternatives to Appsmith, you will see about 8 or 9 names, right? If you look at the website of each of those 9 players, they will all be saying the same thing. It's the same 6 or 7 keywords which are on every single page. And so we wanted to be different, because it seemed like this thing where everybody's saying the same thing and the end user is still confused, right? And so we felt that, okay, let's go to the heart of the problem. What is it that people are sort of trying to solve? And what we realize is that the big problem that people are trying to solve is that they have all these SaaS tools, and they have all these databases, but they want to create a UI functionality on top of that. And they want to empower teams which are non-technical to get access to that data, but in a secure manner, right? And so, how do we now convey this in a easy to understand way? And so now, with the new sort of positioning, if you look at the website now, it's not just about features. Before you even get to the features, you see a lot of different use cases. In conversations, for example, we have started using terms like apps that fill gaps, which is that, hey, you've got all these different gaps in your orgs, and now you need apps which are going to sort of merge all of them and layer over them, right? So, like, there's a lot of that kind of messaging happening. In fact, we are now looking to further refine this message even more towards talking about like really customer focused operations. Of course Appsmith can do a lot of other things, but like we want to sort of really sort of drill down even further, because then that allows us to sort of talk to the multiple different personas. So I think it's just evolution that we're sort of going through, and it's been super super exciting to just see this, because it came from us noticing something in the market, right? That we now have these new personas which have started reaching out to us, and so we wanted to have a messaging that didn't alienate those guys as well. So yeah.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that. Maybe to close our conversation, what's your favorite resource to learn about developer marketing and growing developer tools in general?
I obviously love Hacker News. I mean, I just spend a lot of time on a little too much time on Hacker News, just sort of every day going through different projects. It's a lot of fun. I think the other places are, I mean, obviously the developer marketing Slack channel that we are a part of is a great resource as well. I also sign up to a bunch of newsletters. like the stuff from Cooper Press or like TLDR or Console. Console was a
Mm-hmm.
great is a great resource. David is pretty awesome with what he does in the newsletter. So, and beyond that, Twitter or X.com is what it's called today. I think these are places that one discovers tools, and then obviously there's just the friends network and things like that. So.
All right. Cool. Yeah, I would say we wrap it up at this point.
Yep.
Thanks again for joining me today. I think there were definitely a few really good insights in there. And yeah, maybe if people want to follow you or reach out to you, what would be the best channel to do so?
Yeah, I'm Rishabh Kaul on Twitter. Just first name, last name on Twitter. I'm active on pretty much most Instagram, Twitter. My email is not very hard to find. It's just my first name, last name at Gmail. So yeah, I mean, I'm just always there to grab a cup of coffee or just learn from people in the space. I think the important thing in developer marketing is that even though computers and marketing or whatever evangelizing to developers has been around for a while, it just feels so nascent, right? Like you don't have the kinds of playbooks that traditional SaaS has. People are still sort of learning the best practices and stuff like that, especially as an early stage startup, right? Like
Yeah.
once you have $100 million budget, sure, like go do a large billboard campaign and stuff like that. But I think there's a lot of interesting learnings and even at a tactical level, right? So always looking forward to just learning what's other people's experiences has been.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think our conversation maybe, yeah, some people working in DevTools to do exactly that. All
Yeah.
right. Yeah, thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day, and talk to you
Yeah.
soon.
Thanks, Jonathan. Have a
All
great day
right.
ahead.
Bye.
Bye.